But I'm a little bit nervous about the upcoming season for other reasons. And I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on that. I think this quarterback ongoing, obsession that us as content creators, us as fans, us as media, whatever group you're in, have gone through this offseason have completely blinded us to the real issues that this team faces going into the season, which is, and I asked Shanahan about it yesterday, or was it 2 days ago? No, I guess it was yesterday. I said, hey, what's the deal? I mean, you guys just got gashed by Denver and the Chargers for 6.5 yards a carry. How big of a deal is your run defense or lack thereof? And he said, I didn't like the run D against the Raiders either. And he goes, if it was just based on the preseason, it's a real problem. But he said, like, hey, you know what? We were number one in the league last year against the run. We didn't defend the running quarterback well in the fourth quarter of the San Diego game, or the Charger game, talking about Duggan. He talked about the 75-yard run from Joshua Kelly, and he said, those numbers might be a little skewed, but you could tell that he doesn't like the fact that they haven't stopped the run worth a lick in the preseason, and he's just hoping upon hope that when the bullets start firing for real at Heinz Field a week from Sunday, that the real run D that was number one last year is going to resurface. But to me, he didn't sound real confident. So I'm nervous about that. I'm nervous about, the defensive end depth, which I think is putrid compared to what it was last year. And Kocurek is going to run those guys out there a bunch of snaps. And maybe even a little bit of the O-line depth. I mean, if they lose even one O-lineman, they could be in a jailbreak situation on their quarterback. So I think those three issues are major, primary, kind of, could get you beat and eliminate you from the Super Bowl conversation kinds of issues. And we're not talking about any of them because we're so busy talking about Trey this and Sam that and Brandon this and Purdy that. I think it's hid the real issue. Give me your guys' thoughts on that.
It's definitely hit it. Yeah,
and
go ahead.
One more. Go ahead, Jesse. I just want to add one more to it. I think this entire cornerback situation that they have now, I said Diamador Lenore is the best nickel on this team. I said it on the Crew show. I just want to pat myself on the back, but he's going to play nickel, right? But I think
you're right.
If he plays nickel, now they have an open spot on the other side of Mooney Ward. And I don't know that we really saw a guy establish himself through this training camp or preseason as, hey, he's going to be the guy at corner. So I think there is one more question in there before Jesse goes as well. And that's, hey, they're not going to have either they have a nickel spot question mark or they have a question mark on outside corner on the other side of Mooney Ward.
Yeah, I think this is the first year in a long time that the offense might have to carry the team, especially early on. I mean, Wilkes is new to the team. He hasn't even been acclimated with Bosa. Bosa is obviously going to come in and be great probably immediately. I'm not worried about Bosa necessarily, but I think there's a lot that needs to be kind of picked up on and learned. And a new nickel corner is one of them. A new edge opposite of Bosa is another. The depth is a question mark. There's definitely a lot of glaring weaknesses that we're starting to see, or potential glaring weaknesses that we're starting to see now that the quarterback situation has changed. I think they've always been there. I think we've always kind of known about it, but most people wanted to hear about and talk about the quarterback situation. And I also think this is where people are now getting a little bit flustered with Kyle potentially in the way that maybe the roster has been neglected over the last couple of years in some of these areas. A lot of it due to the picks that they lost going after Trey Lance and CMC. And the quarterback situation has kind of insulated Kyle, I think, for a couple years from criticism. And now that it's been removed, everything is kind of out in the open and people are frustrated with kind of the way that some of the things have been handled. But we'll see. I mean, it's definitely a big deal. But I mean, you guys tell me your opinion. I think that this might be an offensive team more than a defensive team for the first time in a long time. I don't know if that's a hot take or what, but
no, I think you could be onto something. I hope you're wrong, but you could be onto something. I mean, they've got a lot of talent, individual talent all throughout the defense, but doesn't mean they're going to collectively play at a really high level. I'm really eager to see that if they don't, how does Steve Wilkes react? Because D'Amico was sunshine. he would go to the presser and people would have criticism and he'd be like, oh, I really hadn't even thought of that. I mean, he was like so positive and he never took on his players. Wilks gives you that vibe, and I was on the radio today, so I missed out on going down to his presser. But one of the questions I want to ask Steve, and I feel like he's such a straight shooter, he might give me a straight answer, is if this thing starts coming apart defensively, how's he going to react? Because he seems like the kind of guy that wears his emotions on his sleeve, and he's critical. I mean, he steps up, he calls it the way it is, and he may rankle some feathers and upset some players with his public reaction to their struggles. I mean, I don't get the sense that he's going to be like, buttering everybody's muffin all year. I think he's the kind of guy that's going to go to the presser and say, yeah, that's what happened, and this guy needs to step up. And that's going to be a dramatic departure from what D'Amico's tone was as the DC. So I'm kind of eager to see like what they look like defensively, and then what if he starts ripping them. What's their reaction to him? Because the one thing about Steve that is really interesting, he's very capable. He's a really talented coach, and he's been like somewhere new almost every single year of his career. And he doesn't sound like the kind of guy who covers anybody's backside. He seems like the kind of guy that like speaks the truth. And sometimes you got to move when you're hitting that hard. And I'm wondering if he hits hard and then wears out his welcome and the guys stop playing for him because he's so direct. I don't know. It's something to look for.
What do you make of him buffering, or excuse me, to use what you said, buttering the muffin of Isaiah Oliver, though, right? Like, he was asked directly about that one, and that was like his first opportunity this offseason. Because even Shanahan has seen it. Shanahan told us, he's like, yeah, no, this guy has not earned it. Like, he's not playing too well. We can all see it. And Wilks was like, no, that's my guy. He looks good, all that. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing. And
he also said he had a Rolodex of nickels.
Right. And I'm doing a very poor mimicry of his voice. But just specific to that topic, do you think that might have given us an inkling of how he's going to deal with adversity? Because Oliver was signed for a lot of money, and he was not signed for a lot of money to be playing in the fourth quarter of preseason game number 3. I'll tell you that.
It's a great question, Vish. I don't know how he's going to react. I didn't hear him today. I'm shooting to the bottom of the supers here, but Josh Dowling says Wilks basically blamed the linebackers for the poor run defense. And maybe the linebackers are to blame. I mean, there's no question that Graham on the Joshua Kelly
run,
he got caught inside. And when you go with, I was all about D. Winters, Jalen Graham, go with the youth, pass on the vets. But when you do that, you get, sometimes inconsistent run fits and blown plays and easy touchdowns. And we kind of already saw that. So maybe, be careful what you wish for kind of a thing.
But I think he's kind of calling out the obvious there. I mean, Warner, that's never been Warner's strength. Linebackers are lighter in the league than they've ever been. And Fred Warner's strength is in coverage, pass defense, maybe even blitzing or showing the blitz, getting the defense lined up. I would say if he has one area of opportunity, it's filling the gaps in the run game. I mean, there's a lot of times where he meets a running back and he's the one that gets blown up. That is not his strength. I know that he jumps around and has the Quan Alexander vibe, and you would think that translates into him being a heavy hitter, but that is not who he is.
No.
Greenlaw's a heavy hitter, but Fred Warner, I mean, if he's in a situation where offensive linemen are getting to him this season, I think that's going to be really, really bad. And the defense is going to give up a ton of rushing yards in a scenario like that.
So I agree with the last part of what you said. I actually disagree with the first part. I think he's fine in terms of fitting the run. I think you are right, though. He's not old school linebacker like what New England used to have with like Brandon Spikes and Dante Hightower, where pulling guards would come around and they would crack them when they would come around and just screw up the run, right? Like, that's not what they do. But specific to what Krug's talking about, the Jalen Graham play, right? That was opened up, and it's you got to fill the A gap and you got to go. Like, it's right there in front of you. He got caught inside. It's him in the back, one-on-one at the A gap. You got to come make the play. And he didn't. And then the post safety was nowhere to be found to come crack him at like 12 yards. I don't know what happened there. And so it's like a very, very, I think it's a little bit different situation, specifically when you're blaming the linebackers for that one. Cause like, okay, that one specifically, Graham missed the fit, and like perhaps that's happened. But I also think there's been issues with how they're fitting in general. Like I've seen stuff where they are, and I have to go back. I've not done a lot of preseason in-depth watching. This is on TV, but you see stuff where they're pulling stunts and they're blitzing guys away from where the run is and stuff like that, and they're just straight up getting gashed too. And so I don't know if maybe the game planning will help and all of that, but I do know that Steve Wilkes was the coordinator in Cleveland a couple years ago. Now, Cleveland didn't have the interior defensive talent that the 49ers have, like a Javon Hargrave or an Eric Armstead. They were definitely smaller on the inside, but they also struggled.
Can you guys tell me your opinion? People in the chat think I'm off my rocker. They think Fred Warner is a heavy hitting linebacker. Greenlaw, to me, it's Greenlaw and it's Hufanga. Those are your actual tone setters when it comes to laying people out. Fred Warner, I'm not saying he doesn't clean people up, but if he gets one-on-one with a big back, he's usually on the losing end of that. He is not. I don't think he's a heavy hitter at all.
He was,
I don't think he's a big hitter,
he was a grab and drag rover backs combo safety backer at BYU.
It's not a knock, but he's not a heavy hitter.
Yeah, he's a great player, but I mean the game's a passing game, and he's a guy who's maybe the NFL's best coverage linebacker.
Yes,
he's not
1,000%.
I mean, it's not like Jesse's calling him a wuss. I mean, come on, everybody needs to,
Nah, he doesn't. But he doesn't crack people either. Jesse's absolutely right.
He's not old school Pepper Johnson. I mean, he's not a thumper. If anything,
I didn't say he's not a good tackler. See, this is where people are getting confused. Now they're saying I'm saying he's not a good tackler. I never once said that. That didn't come out of my mouth. I said he's not a heavy hitter. There's a difference.
Yeah. I don't think that's debatable, by the way.
He's a speed-oriented player who I think has been covered up by some of the better, interior guys. And why don't we get to that? Because to me, when I'm looking at, I was doing an interview the other day with Jody Mack from who's on WIP in Philly, CBS Sports Radio, WFAN in New York, old buddy of mine, radio guy. And
all right, Krug.
I love him. I love Jody Mack. I'm a Jody Mack guy, and we were talking Hargrave. And I was mentioning how the Niner run D is kind of a sieve. And he said, well, Javon Hargrave was a great pass rusher here, but he really wasn't much of a run defender, and the numbers kind of showed it. Look at the Niner front. They don't have a DJ Jones. They don't. Givens, one-gap penetrator. Kalia Davis, one-gap penetrator. Javon Hargrave, maybe the best one-gap penetrator in the game. Armstead is really functionally strong. He's solid against the run. But you're still talking about a 6'7" guy with long legs, long arms. Kinlaw is supposed to be a thumper inside. He's supposed to be the guy that absorbs blocks. But, we've seen him get kicked out of the club and get bounced around in the run game in the playoffs last year. And I think he's largely non-dependable when it comes to the inside run. If I were the Niners, I would have signed a guy like Robert Cooper, who I think the Eagles and Seahawks cut at the cut down, the former Florida State fire plug. Put at least one guy on your practice squad who is a true inside A-gap shutdown run defender. One guy that if you're going up against a team, because the Raiders ran it up the gut on them, and so did Denver, and for the most part, so did the Chargers. And the key to the Niner defense is they've got unbelievable lighter, faster speed linebackers you can't go east-west. But the book was you got to run in the A gaps at them, but you couldn't do that when they had DJ Jones. Well, they don't have DJ Jones,
too, right? The book with the wide 9, that wider spread front. You
right. You got bigger gaps. You got guys shooting those gaps, and there's open spaces in the run D. So I think the run D. I mean, you can pay Bosa $7 trillion. If you don't get to third and long, what the hell good is Nick Bosa? I mean, Nick Bosa is totally negated if you cannot stop the run, and you're looking at a series of 3rd and 1, a series of 3rd and 2s. He's not helping you on 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2. He's good on 3rd and long. That means you got to win on 1st and 2nd down. And I'm skeptical whether they can do that with the run D that I've seen this summer. I'll leave it at that. We'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes.
I wanna refute this too. I get caught up in the chat. I definitely do.
Go for it.
But a lot of people are saying that Javon Hargrave's a better run defender than Buckner. That is absolutely false.
Yeah, no, Buckner's
not.
consistently. I mean,
I will
Hargrave is
say-
a harder guy to block as a pass rusher.
His PFF
Um,
grade will look better though in a one gap defense, Krug. Like for example, Grady Jarrett is the best example. Similar kind of defense, a little different now that Dean Pease is in Atlanta, but he always had a somewhat positive run defense grade, even when he was playing with Dan Quinn and stuff. I mean, it's not exactly the same player, but similar in terms of explosive one gap shooters. I think his quote unquote PFF grade in terms of his run defense is going to look a little bit better with this defense.
Yeah, Judge Shuttle is the one you're talking about, Jesse, right?
I
Niners
don't know.
fans thought
I
Buckner
just
was
thought-
great. Hargrave's better run defender easily. I
no,
totally
I
disagree with that.
One. Maybe a better pass rusher. For
All right,
sure.
I
Well,
titled.
Pass rusher.
If
Well,
we're
by the way-
talking PFF grades, and I don't think PFF is gospel by any means, but I mean, if we can pop up these run defense and tackling PFF grades for Fred Warner, I would say that they bode well for my argument earlier.